we focus on Meet the Speaker series. Today we're going to have the pleasure of talking to Scott Wozniak, the CEO of Swoz Consulting. It's a wonderful thing to have him here. We have the mutual love and admiration for a company called Chick-fil-A, which we might talk about a little bit. And just to let you know who Scott is, he was a child actor. He has a website where he actually puts up on there, Scott Makes Everything Possible, which when I looked at that again this morning, I thought to myself, wow, this is somebody everybody needs to hear from, listen from. Clearly a bold statement, but then I found out that he actually can do it. So that's pretty cool. His website is also got, I did a Google search this morning, Scott, 865,000 Google search responses came back. So I tried it on a couple of our other content partners because CEOs that are watching this are looking to hire keynote speakers, trainers, executive coaches, leadership coaches. Maybe not an angel investor like you are. I hope they're not looking for that on this call, but they know how to get a hold of you at scottwozniak.com. But in any event, you've worked with Chick-fil-A, you've worked with many other Fortune 500 companies, you've done business on 6 continents, which you and I share that, but we did totally different kinds of businesses when we were out traveling the world. You live in Atlanta with your wife and your 4 children, and anybody that watches your social media account, we know that you just got back from Costa Rica, so we're going to enjoy a little bit of a topic about that and maybe talk about that. And with that, I'm just going to say, welcome, Scott.
Thanks, Bill. Looking forward to hanging out with you. It's always awesome, man.
Well, thank you. One of my quandaries would be the very first question when I'm talking to somebody like you, because we could dig deep into branding, culture, leadership, but I'm going to take a different, because our audience being CEOs and owners looking for speakers, why did you found Swoz Consulting?
Yeah, honestly, it comes out of failure and pain. It was not I was on a totally different life path, pursuing a bunch of other stuff. I was working, doing this cool nonprofit world at the time. Worked really nice, grand vision, really great people with great hearts who were also terrible leaders, like terrible. And I don't just mean like it was a little bit annoying, like, some of those organizations don't exist today because they were led into the ground and the mission isn't happening anymore, not through them at least. And okay, before I get too bad picking at these guys, I was one of them. Like, I created some serious troubles with, and I would say I had a good heart. And the failures weren't like epic moral failures or, illegal things. Dumb mistakes, little things. The leader who couldn't let go of everything and micromanage everything. The leader who wouldn't make decisions on hard conversations. The conflicting plans. And so, out of the pain of these years, I was struggling myself, watching my bosses crash and burn. I was talking to a mentor, and someone handed me a business book. And honestly, at first, I was like, listen, I'm like this creative, nonprofit noble guy. Like I don't do accounting, and they're like, read the book, man. And so I started reading the book, and like stay up till 2 a.m. reading that first book, because it was like finally someone had words for the things I had been wrestling with. No one ever even talked to me about this before: leadership, systems, strategy, operations. And it was like, oh, there's more than a grand vision, and then you just try hard, right? Good intentions and hard effort, and like, no, there's systems and strategies. And so I started reading all the books I could get. I got my own coach. I started going to all the workshops I could and conferences and got certifications. And honestly, one day, it's coming together for me what it is to do all this grand stuff and build great organizations and the systems of it. And I was shaking my fist at God. Like, I was honestly kind of whining and complaining, Bill. I'm like, it's not right. The world's held back for bad leaders, and somebody should be helping these people. And why don't you send someone to make it? And I felt like the Holy Spirit just started elbowing me, like, yeah, if only somebody would step up and help these folks. And so I think that's my calling. I mean, it really woke a fire in me as I heard one of my mentors talked about this as your righteous indignation, right? Like it's not right. Somebody should do something. That is a really good signal to what you might be a part of your life calling, and maybe multifaceted life. I'm a father and a bunch of other things that I think are a part of who I'm called to be, but at least one of those features is, man, the way I say it now is I feel like I'm supposed to be Merlin to the Arthurs of the world, right? You got a vision for Camelot, and you want to build something that God's put on your heart. Well, maybe I can come behind you, work a little magic, and help you get there, right? I can give you Excalibur and do some fun stuff, and we can help build Camelot a little faster. And so that's been a passion. So I ended up going back to grad school to get a master's in business, emphasis in organizational leadership, got a coaching certification, and it started this whole journey of like, how do I help other people build their organizations, get the dreams they want? Because I was that guy who's like, would somebody help me figure this out? And I've seen too many of my friends crash and burn. And so yeah, the whole idea of how do I put a consulting company together and do this came out of like, man, it's not right. Somebody should help these folks. So yeah, out of my failure came kind of a vision for how I can maybe help other people avoid that same failure. So yeah, that was the original motivation. And man, it has been deeply fulfilling. It's a perfect wiring for my personality. It's not just a noble thing, I think. Like, it fits me so well. I got new and interesting problems to solve. I love complex, difficult to like untangle. Like, ooh, let's figure that out. I go in and do a lot of deep analysis. I love the people side of things, and kind of, because there's like, what's the right answer, and then how do you convince people to actually implement that? That's a whole other problem. And so all the layers of it. And then I get to bounce around the world. You mentioned Costa Rica. I was in Europe the month before that. I'm like, I bounce around the world meeting people and learning cool stuff. It's been even better than I expected it to be. Okay, so I happen to be a Christian, and so this is a big part of my story. Is like, I always have these plans.
Didn't come out yet.
And God continually wrecks my plans with something better than my plans. And so like, my life story is one of like, I had a plan, and then nope, I'm going to end up taking a left turn, and it turns out to be better than my plan. And then that's going to get wrecked. So yeah, I was on a different path, and man, I love this even more. I didn't even know this thing existed. And so, man, I'm having a blast. It's been great.
So we all got that you're low energy. You don't know how to read a Bible. You don't know what a church is. We all got that out of there. Yep.
Yeah, that's right.
We both touched on Costa Rica, but one of the things you were doing I found interesting was, I believe, and correct me where I'm off base here, you were doing your own long-range planning while you had some key clients with you. Is that what I should get out of that?
Yeah, heck yeah.
Can you unpack that a little bit? Because I'm sure CEOs are scratching their head. You took clients to your long-range planning.
Yeah. So it starts with my personal life planning, business planning process, right? Companies do this. You have a process to what are we going to do, and what's our key priorities, and where are our weaknesses we need to work on, and then how are we going to get there? Why don't we do that for our life? I think it's one of the great aha moments for me early on. Remember, I went through this coaching process. This is 2002. So that's 22 years ago as of this recording, 22 and a half years ago. So it's been a long time. And in that coaching program, they said, okay, we're going to help your clients as a leadership coach, help them build a life plan. Well, you have to go through it yourself. You're not going to talk about it. We're going to experience it. It's a good training principle. So in the process, I'm like, wait, I got to figure this out. And it was more significant and transformative than I expected it to be. And then I did it again. And every year for the last 22 years, I've been updating and working on a life plan. And in the early years, it was me just figuring it out, and a lot of my life direction. And it's been delightful. Every now I've got records, go back 20 years. I can go back and look and be like, oh, I remember when I was dreaming about that. Now I'm living that. Okay, so then I'm doing that. Then I start talking to some of my friends. I don't know, this is 10, 12 years ago. Other high capacity guys that are going through this, and I'm like, they're a life plan, and like, well, tell me a little bit about yours, and oh, that's cool. And then one of the guys was like, oh man, can I see more details? And I was like, what if we do this? What if we get together for a day, and I'll bring my life plan, you bring your life plan, and we'll just swap it together and build at the very simplest level, all I was thinking about was like, you're reading some great books. I want to know what books we're probably reading similar things I need to read. Like, we'll swap some ideas. it turned out to be even better than I thought. Because he was also a kind of big visionary thinker with big plans, doing similar work that I was doing. It wasn't a consultant exactly, but he was a leader of an organization that was fast growing, and so we were thinking through a lot of this stuff, and I was like, oh man, that's a great idea. And he challenged me on a point, and I challenged him on a point, and it was like, that's really good. A couple of years later, another one of my friends heard about that, and was like, we should do that. And then I had three guys I'm meeting one on one with, and I was like, if just for my own schedule, man, like I need you guys to get to know each other. Like I can't keep doing this multiple day process. Like there's got to be. So then we got a group of guys together, and it was phenomenal what it was like getting a small group of guys together to all go away and work on our life. And it started, let's bring our plans. And then it has evolved to like, well, let's go somewhere and we do some pre-work and kind of load up some data. Mm-hmm. But honestly, when you get to a certain, you can probably relate to this. You get to a certain level of like responsibility and success, and dude, just carving out the time for sitting down and asking the big questions can be a real challenge. There's always people pressing on you. So what it has evolved into is every year I go to a really epic place because it's fun. It inspires us. It helps us think. It also gets us out of our normal comfort zone and out of our normal distractions. And we go away and we have some fun while we're out there, because why not, right? When you're out there, we're going to get some ATVs and we got some surfboards when we're in Costa Rica. We're going to have some good time. But every day, for at least half the day, we sit down in a chunk and we go through a process of like, here's the questions, here's the idea, here's the exercises. And we start as a group, then we split up and we go scatter among the property, go back to your room, go, in this case, we were on the beach, go sit on the beach, like go somewhere, get alone and do the processing. And then we come back together. And then at the evening, we share, hey, what did you come up with? What are your things? What are your things? And then we swap ideas and challenge each other. And we'd even ask questions like, I'm really wrestling with this, guys. I'm in my case, I said, I've got 3 really cool opportunities and I don't have time to do all 3 excellently next year. So can you guys, I'm going to throw them on the table. Can you guys bounce them around? And now I'm still going to make the final call, right? They're not my boss, but the value of having other people ask me questions, weigh in, is it sounds like you actually prefer this one, but the money's better over here. And you got to decide, Scott, what's more important for you right now. And like, oh, that's it clarifies what's the real choice I'm making. And so all that to say, that process has just been, I mean, I don't want to overstate this, but I don't know if I can. It's life-changing. Like it really literally changes the way I live my life, what I say yes to, what I say no to, the things I decide to pursue. There have been years where we've said things to guys like, hey, you're sandbagging that. You can do at least twice what that is. Like, why did you pick that number? And they're like, well, it's 20% more. We're like, screw that. What is actually your capacity here? And they're like, oh, I could double. Then why aren't you going for double? There's also another year, Bill, where we got with one guy and he said, I'm going to crank my business up and I'm going to be on the road even more because look at all these opportunities. And we were like, hold on, didn't you just finish telling us that your marriage is in trouble? Let me just put this on the table. If you win the business you're talking about and your marriage is worse this time next year, are you okay with that? And he's like, no. And then we literally said to him, then maybe your life plan goal should be to make less money next year so that you can be home and recover your marriage. And so it's not just how do we grind more? It's literally what life do you want to live? What would it take to get there? How can I chase that this year? And it's some of the best. I mean, it's tactical. It's inspirational. We also eat a ridiculous amount of great food. It's awesome. We brought in a chef to come park in the property. We were kind of, we were literally on the beach. Like you had to drive on the beach to get to our spot. So we're out kind of disconnect, which is great for a retreat, off the beaten path. And we eat food, we dream, we play in the water, and we come back ready to refreshed and ready to kind of pursue hopefully a better life than we would have otherwise. I would do it whether I brought people with me or not, but it's also like, since I'm going to do it anyway, man, let's rock and roll. So it's a small crew. It's not open to just kind of anybody who wants to come. There's a bit of an application process so that we make sure that we're all truly peers talking to each other. But 2025, we're recording this at the end of 24. We did Costa Rica. 25, we're going to Iceland. So that'll be
We're
Totally different experience. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We will not be swimming. Well, I guess technically we could get in some of they've got some cool hot
hot,
springs. But
hot springs. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that we'll get into, but the rest it'll be in fact the one of the goals we want to go late in the year where we have a chance to see the northern lights.
Uh,
So
so you're going to be flipping your days and your nights to make that happen. So that's
you
another
got
goal.
it.
Yeah.
It's adventure, that's for
Yeah.
sure. So but yeah, I this has been one of the fun fusions of life, I would say, is the chance to do things that help other people, that also create adventure, that also help live my life mission of serving leaders. And I would say this is as you get down the road in life planning for anyone listening, the goal more and more for me is to do multi-purpose things. Don't do something that just accomplishes one purpose. Like it accomplishes several things at one time. I'm going to build my business while pouring into other people, while having an adventure, while working on my spiritual life, while like you stack all that and say, okay, yeah, that you should do something like that. And so, yeah, I could go on and on, but that's one of the real goals I'm working on these days is
Okay.
how do I do that with my kids? How do I pour into my kids while growing my business, and like check all these boxes so I'm not just doing a single thing. I'm accomplishing multiple major things with every big activity.
Well, you've shared some of your family and some of your videos and your podcasts and in your books, but you're teaching them as you go. I like to sum all that up in is how can we serve others together? That's kind of
Ooh,
what's
I like.
burnt into me recently with my team, but because it's not, I'm much older than you, and so we don't charge at CEO Zones as another thing, So it's a different thing that I'm going through in life. But in any event, how can we serve others together? Just has been a revelation for me.
Yeah.
Uh, so we could talk about leadership qualities probably quite a bit, but what leadership qualities do you think are essential in driving a startup in
Mm,
2025?
mm,
There's all of these, I'll scale your businesses, there's all these coaches,
yeah.
and people can, and I want to be not use any names, but some of them are building their own $500 million business, $49 at a time, and that is one way to go. But what are those critical business things where maybe an entrepreneur watches this by accident, not necessarily established CEO, but an entrepreneur, and
Yeah.
he or she says, "I'm launching my new business." What leadership qualities really would resonate for you?
Man. A few things pop to mind.
Mhm.
The first would be to become a learner. The better your learning ability, the better everything else is. I mean, it's like everything presumes you're good at learning. And if you're good at learning and you're not good at anything else, well, by definition, you can just figure it out. And so, what does it mean to be a good learner? I happen to be neck deep. It's funny you asked this. I'm neck deep in this right now. I'm doing my own podcast. I've got a series, this first ever kind of multi-episode series I'm doing on one topic, and it's learning how to learn. The journey of I've been on to try to figure out how do you get better at learning, and it's everything from tactical stuff like how do I get better books in? I've been a huge fan of audiobooks and podcasts and shows like this. It's like, oh man, the ability to absorb that stuff, including pro tip. Um, I play my stuff back at a faster speed. Most people's brains can listen faster than we can speak, and it's a trainable ability. And like even like on YouTube, I don't know if you know, there's a little button you can hit 1.5 speed, and most people at 1.5 speed, you have to think a little more, but it's you can actually comprehend everything, and you get more content in. And so there's the tactical, but also I would say learning involves a humility, like a certain willingness to acknowledge, hey, I was wrong. My original idea wasn't right, and I'd say that's true for all levels. Maybe times two for people who are doing startup mode because you get excited about your idea. It's like my baby, right? I'm going to put my baby in the world and everyone's going to love it. And then what happens if they don't, or they don't like the second half? And I see a lot of entrepreneurs struggle and fail to launch because they're unwilling to let go of the original idea that was their identity is tangled up in the product, right? Or the
Right.
offering. And then somebody criticizes the offering, then they feel personally criticized and they get defensive. And you got to untangle that and say, hey, I'm okay even if this thing stinks, and I might have to do version 2, 3, version 7 before you finally get something that really clicks. And some of that is the tactics of getting good customer feedback, and some of that is the emotional maturity to be like, I'm okay even if the thing I put in the world fails first version. And so, and even if it's good but not great, like the willingness to keep improving and tweaking and learning, and not be like, hey, close enough, I'm done, I don't want that feedback anymore. Like that is the key to the people who really get on a rocket ship, and those who kind of inch their way along, is the rate of learning. How quickly do you get the new information? How quickly do you implement the new ideas? How much emotional resistance do you have to go through in that process? How exhausting is it? Learning is like the game, like it's the foundational key factor that sets the rest of the rules. And so that would be the first major thing I would say, is like learn how to learn, emotionally, tactically, figure out how to ask better questions of your customers, right? The whole process of like, how do we learn as a person and as a team? That's super critical. And then ironically, I think the next thing though, and this, by the way, all this comes out of my own life journey, things I have struggled with and trying to figure out myself, especially this next one, is learning how to focus. Maybe like I always have part of entrepreneurial life, and I think I relate to this, is like I got started because I had a lot of cool ideas. Like, ooh, we could do this, and oh, we could do that, and oh, what if somebody helped with this? Well, the problem with that is you often have, well, I always have more ideas than I have time to execute. And it's like every year I add more ideas to the pile, and I still don't have time to execute the last ones. And so you heard me talk about this in my life planning thing. I'm regularly saying, I got a bunch of cool ideas. And they're all really cool, Bill, like legitimately cool ideas. And I don't have time to do them all. And the mistake I have made in the past is trying to do a little bit to all of them. I'll give you a real personal example. This is a meet the speakers thing, right? So long story short, my career, I had gone to become a consultant, and I happened to go to high school with the family that owns Chick-fil-A. A guy named Andrew Cathy's my high school buddy. Now his whole family are my friends, but Andrew was the first connection point for me. We played 3 sports together, rode dirt bikes. Great guy, right? But I went off and became a consultant, and actually, this is like 30 years ago. But I was like, hey, good luck with your little mall restaurant. Hope you make it. Yeah, they're going to make it. I think they're going to pull through. They're on track for 24 billion in sales this year. So yeah. So I blew them off. I went off, became a consultant, and then I'm back in Atlanta visiting my family, hanging with my buddies, and they're like, "Wait, maybe you should come do some stuff with us." And so I came in. I was on staff full time for them for a while, and my job was unique because I was like, I'm not really a restaurant guy. Now I know a bunch, but at the time I was like, I don't know anything about restaurants. What are we talking about? And they said, no, we have those. We don't need you to work in the business. We want you to work on the business. So my job was 50% of the time travel the world, go inside other companies, learn what the best in the world do. And then the other 50% was come back and turn it into some sort of upgrade for Chick-fil-A, build a new department, change an existing system. Super fun. Like I got paid to learn and do improvement. It was super cool. So I did that for several years. I wrote a couple books, and people started asking me to speak on the side. And then long story short, there was kind of a God moment where God was like, I want you to go help these people. I'm like, but I love my Chick-fil-A buddies. And he's like, I want you to go help these people. So I told Chick-fil-A, I think I got to go leave my job and go help these other people. And by the way, the first client to sign me was Chick-fil-A. So they're like, hey, if we can't have you full time, can we lock a few things down? And so I get to keep working with them every year. I love it. But okay, all that was a tangent. Say I'm leaving Chick-fil-A. I'm launching. I'm getting ready to go. And somebody asked me like, well, what could you speak on? This is not best practice. Don't do what I'm about to say, guys. I sent them a Word doc with 3 pages, single spaced, of all the topics that I could talk on. Not good, man. Not good. I could not focus. I'm like, holy cow. Look, I got another idea and another. Now, I had legitimately done a crazy wide range of projects at that time. So like I wasn't making stuff up. I was thinking, oh, what would be better is if I tell them all the things I could possibly talk on. And so we're just going to go through everything I've ever given a talk on in my life. Here it is. I struggle with focus. And what I have said, I can tell you is the more I learn to narrow that down and narrow that down and narrow that down, the more impact I have, the more success I have, the easier it is to put a team behind me. And so there's a bit of a tension here between learning and focus, because sometimes the learning process is let's experiment, let's run several experiments. But at some point, you got to decide, what am I going to focus on? And so the way we talk about it is you maybe want to fire a lot of bullets before you fire any cannonballs. So if you're going to run an experiment, run a bunch of small experiments, easily testable, no big cost. You can reverse it, not putting a ton of time or team on it. Just test it a little bit, get the feedback, do the process. But at some point you say, okay, this bullet is really returning great results. Like it's really hitting the target. Stop firing everything else for a little while, put a big cannonball behind that sucker and go to town. And so like learn. And then at some point, now this is the hard part. You're going to say no to things that are actually working and profitable and awesome and making an impact in order to do something that's doing that a little bit better. That's the brutal, hard choice for me, because I'm like, all three of those options I worked at this past month, they're all really cool options, Bill. Like I'm like, that would be awesome, and it would be successful, and we could make an impact in the world. So would that one, and so would that. And in the early days, I was like saying no, like that's bad. We should do the good one. That's easy. The hard part is when you're looking at multiple good options and you're saying, what am I going to focus on? But until I focus, I have never had outsized results. I've never really scaled. All of that comes when you have the courage, because it's scary to me, the courage to focus. And so that I'd say learn, be willing to change and adjust. But at some point when you're ready, you've got to just bite the bullet and focus on something and say, that's it. We don't do anything else. I'll finish with this metaphor. One of my mentors who was challenging me on this back in the day, like he looked at my list and he's like, yeah, you're just confusing people, Scott. And here's the metaphor he used. It's a beautiful metaphor. It really stuck with me. He says, okay, it's like you're out there and it's like we're ice breaking ships. I don't know if you know the southern edges of the world. They have these ships that go ahead and break open the shipping lanes at the spring and fall to kind of get people like, hey, we can start traveling again, right? Okay, so ice breaking ships are coming through. And he says, what we want to do is you got a lot of things loaded on the ship. Scott, you've done a ton of things. There's a bunch of stuff on your ship, so to speak. And you want to load all that up front and impress people with all the things you can do. What you end up with is a flat-fronted boat. And you have this big, wide front that you're smacking into the ice trying to bust through. And he says, man, you're never going to break through, and I love this phrase, it always stuck with me. He says, you're never going to break through the icy indifference of the world by telling them all the things you can do. You got to narrow that down to a single point of differentiation. What is the main key thing that they need to know to get to know you and get interested? And then you break through and catch their attention with that thing. Now, after you've done that, all those other things you can help them with, it's wonderful that you have the back of the boat loaded with other supplies. Now that they've got your attention and you built a relationship, boy, you can run with them for years. But you got to decide, what are you going to break through the icy indifference of the world with and get their attention? And that for me is focus. And I hate it. It's still uncomfortable, but I can no longer deny how critical that is. Learn a bunch, explore a bunch, and then at some point pick something to win with and put all your eggs in that basket and go to town and break through and make that happen. Now, the good news is once that's humming and you get a team, then I have been able to like move on to the next thing while that boat keeps chugging along, so to speak, and I can launch another boat. But you really don't want to launch 3, 4, 5 boats at the same time. Pick one thing, make it work before you pick the next thing.
You hit a bunch of points there from your books, from your podcasts, from videos. The 5 levels of trust struck my mind at one point when you were thinking about that. The concept of blessing your customers opposed to being competitive with your competitors. And then I cheated on your website because I study websites, and you took that 3 pages and now it's only 3 bullets.
Yeah.
That you talk about, at least what you say are your keynote speaking, and that's around growing a business, creating fans for the brand, and attracting and keeping great talent, or top talent, maybe you used on yours.
Yeah.
So that's still the point of your
Yeah,
keynote speaker as we
exactly.
think of that.
The
Okay.
customer experience engine, this set of systems that's we call it an engine, little diagram that
Yep.
creates raving fans. And then really closely tied to that is the employee experience engine. What do you do to keep your staff fully engaged? Because for leaders, like we serve our staff and our staff serve our customers, and that's the chain that creates the raving fan. And so that's kind of been the spine of like, we'll do that. Now, once we get into a company and help them get their customer experience up, yeah, I get the fun. Like there's a bunch of stuff on back of the boat. We're like, well, we'll help you with that piece and we can solve that problem. But the tip of the spear these days is, man, if you want raving fans, if you want systems that allow your staff to create raving fans and put you in like the legendary category in your space, then let's talk. And I'll add this one comment because a lot of times people think that raving fans are for like the cool consumer products, right? Like if you're Apple, right? We do sexy electronics, sure. Man, I've seen this done with construction companies and
Steel
utilities
company.
companies and legal services and financial guys and like a lot of the business to business technical category. There's some crazy raving fans companies out there. They're just not globally famous for it because like, well, Apple's customer, like who does Apple want to buy iPhones? Everybody, right? So when Apple does it right, everybody knows. But when a commercial construction company does it right, only their customers know. And so maybe they're never going to be globally famous, but in their niche, in their space where like it's their people, oh man, they have raving fans. And I could tell you story after story like that. And so that might be the thing I'd say is we help people create raving fans. And yes, I have worked with Disney and Chick-fil-A and a lot of other cool consumer brands, but man, I've also seen this in the business to business technical zone in really cool ways. And so that's been kind of the main thing that for the last several years, and I'll put it this way, we aren't even begun to tap the needs for that. I mean, there's a huge global need for customer experience improvement. And so I've got 20 folks on staff and we are all in on creating raving fans for our clients. It's been a lot of fun.
I'm going to totally change gears here. I know you're on the board of an organization called Pathway Home.
Oh yeah.
Why does that come into your world? How do you what's going on at Pathway Home?
Yeah, man, it is a beautiful, intense, powerful thing. So, Pathway Home is a residential program for women whose life have completely crashed, hit rock bottom, and I mean sometimes come out of the jail system, sometimes not. Sometimes it's been private and most of the world doesn't know, but like true rock bottom, and they need to restart their life. And so, it's a program for 12 months. They get involved, they go through this process and they really get their life rebuilt. We sometimes say it's almost like reparenting because many of the cases, not all, but many of the cases, they came out of a pretty broken home situation. Abusive parents, for example, not just not nice, but like the parents were the abusers, and so there's like restart some of the fundamentals. Now, where it came from is actually my mother started that organization. And
Oh,
so it went through this whole process. And here's where the journey came from. My mother is also a leadership coach, consultant, entrepreneur. If you wonder where I get some of these crazy ideas and stuff, I mean, that's a part of the process. My parents are not typical. They've got a lot of unique things my parents have done. And so, yeah, I grew up kind of odd and thinking that was normal because hey, that's what people do, right? Apparently not, but my family did. So my mom was a leadership coach, and she didn't come out of this story. She doesn't have a tragic backstory. She was a successful leadership coach, and a friend of hers came to her and said, "Man, could you help my niece? She's got a broken scenario. Can this coaching stuff work for her?" And honestly, at the time, the leadership coaching programs and I ended up getting my certification through the same program she did, they taught us, hey, coaching doesn't work for broken people. That's what counseling and other programs for. Coaching is for like high success functional people to go to the next level. Except, if I could be really honest, Bill, we were talking about it and we're like, do you know anybody who's not broken? Because I don't know anybody who's like, who are those healthy people you're talking about? Like, we are all struggling with something. Some of our issues are more, have bigger consequences, right? But all of us have problems that we're wrestling with. And so she was like, I'll do a couple coaching sessions with her. And long story short, what we discovered was that the coaching process works whatever kind of problem you're going through. And so that started a longer conversation and realized we need a lot more than the once every other week coaching call that I might do with a CEO. We need like deep intensive stuff, which led to like lots of sessions, which led to a residential program. And so as that thing really took off, it's been tremendous to see the life change. So it grew into a ministry that they own a home that women can move into. It's here south of Atlanta, and people come from all over the country to this program and get their life reset and have a powerful deal. So I don't do any of the direct coaching. Typically, it's not going to be appropriate for a man to sit with these women who are in a vulnerable situation. A lot of times, men have been the most dangerous people in their life, and so I'm on the board. I help with the strategy and the fundraising and support, and we've got a staff that does the actual direct care for the girls. But it's been tremendous. They have last we measured 83% of the women 5 years out were living in a fully employed, engaged, walking with God, reporting great life. And I don't know how much you know about this space, but that is not a normal number. The normal percentages are tragically low. Once they hit rock bottom, they can't get out of that. And yeah, and I would just say that it's not as bad as it sounds. I guess just the old processes don't work. If you really engage in a listen, and this would be good for all of us. We can grow and change. All of us. This is the lesson maybe you can learn. Maybe you're not a woman in that situation, but like, I don't care how deep the problem is. It is possible to grow and change. Some of that, I have to say, as a Christian, that's the Christian story. Is God's changed my heart. I've seen Him change a lot of people's hearts. But like, it's a fact. Like, look at the results. Now, just because people can doesn't mean they will. You have to do the work. You have to show up. You have to be willing to make those choices. But there's nothing in your life that you can't change. If these women can change all their stuff, you can change whatever it is. And so that thing you think's holding you back, like, I just can't, I wasn't born with it. I don't have it. I've never been good at. Okay. I mean, it stinks that you haven't been good at it in the past. So get good at it. There's almost no, unless we're talking about like, Bill, if you want to go to the NBA, I got bad news for you. I don't think it's going to happen, buddy. There's a certain
I can
physiological.
take my own basketball. Yeah.
There you go. There's your shot. You can be the ball. But yeah, there are some zones where if it's a physical performance, you have to have the right physical body type. I'm not tall enough to make the NBA. But if it's an emotional, mental, human thing that doesn't require you to have a particular body type, you can learn it. There really is nothing that's not possible when you learn the human growth process and what it takes to grow and change, then the good news / bad news is there's no limits. I mean, the reason that's good is you can do anything. And the bad news is now it's the question's on you. Are you really willing to go through the change process and go to the next level? There's no excuse. If you want to do it, you just have to be willing to put in the work.
So your friend Andrew, who's the CEO of Chick-fil-A now, and hopefully will achieve that 24 billion here in the next few days, actually.
Yeah.
But before Andrew was born, I happened to be with his grandfather, Truett, and he looked me dead in the eye and he said, "You work at this Boysville. You're in the Air Force. You work at Chick-fil-A, and you volunteer at Boysville, San Antonio, Texas." And he looks at me, and he was a 13-year-old Sunday school teacher for, I believe, 50 years.
Yeah.
Andrew's grandfather, somewhere close to that.
Yep.
Many decades, we'll say.
That's right.
And he says, "Well, I would rather build boys than mend men." So you and Andrew had that together back in your high school days. Maybe you didn't know that between your mother and his grandfather. And for sure, Andrew's dad, Dan, continues that. So we're going to have to bring this to a close, but it was fun. Maybe this should have been a three-parter. But for CEOs and owners that are looking for a leadership coach, a brand coach, a how to make the right process to attract the right customers, and another Truett Cathy that I always found he was so brilliant. He was not in the Mensa Society like you were, but he had these brilliant little things that burnt in my mind 40 years ago, 45 years ago, 50 years ago now in one case. I would rather attract the best employees, Bill, when I was out running in the field with some of the Chick-fil-A's there. I'd rather attract the best employees because lo and behold, if we give them time, they'll attract the best customers. And
Yes,
once you attract the best customers, they'll start to attract the best employees, and all of a sudden, it's a snowball. And I
that's right.
think $24 billion later, he probably was right. But if we need a keynote speaker, a executive coach, a leadership coach, uh, maybe you, in your life 10-year plan, somebody listening and watching says, "Ooh, I want to go with Scott to some foreign country for life planning." They better get that on their 10-year goal and start working on it. But how to get a hold of Scott is scottwozniak.com, Scott at Swoz, SWOZ leadership.com, correct?
Yes. Yep. Both of those will get to me.
Right. And
Absolutely.
if you happen to forget all of that or don't want to replay the tape, he is also a founding member of CEO Zones, a content partner. He's been very gracious to us. He is out there serving others through CEO Zones. So get his free content at ceozones.com. Reach out to him and hire him as a keynote speaker. It's really been a pleasure to have you with us today, Scott.
Thanks, Bill. It's been awesome.
Thank you.